What if the original plan had proceeded without deviation? It's a question that echoes through the very architecture of our world, a foundational crack upon which our entire history of struggle, redemption, and faith has been built. The story of the fall of man isn't just a religious tale. From a speculative historian's perspective, it represents the ultimate point of divergence. Every war we've fought, every law we've written, every piece of art that speaks of suffering and hope, it all stems from this single cataclysmic break in the timeline. We live in the aftermath, in a reality defined by a cosmic course correction. But what if there was never a need for a correction? What if we were still on the original path? This is the kind of profound what if that our channel was made for. We've tasked our AI simulation with its most ambitious project yet, to model a reality where the fall never happened. Not to simply imagine a perfect, static utopia, but to run a complex simulation of the cascading consequences of humanity remaining on its intended trajectory. We instructed the AI to remove the catalyst, the serpent, the forbidden fruit, the act of disobedience, and to chart the development of a human race that never experienced that initial separation, that primal sense of guilt. What we're exploring here isn't just an alternate timeline. We are attempting to visualize God's Plan A. The simulation begins not with a cataclysm, but with a non-event. The AI visualizes it as a shimmering, branching path. On one side, we see the familiar narrative, the shadows lengthening in the garden, the fear, the shame, the figures of Adam and Eve clothed in leaves, their faces etched with a new and terrible knowledge. The air grows heavy, scented with loss. But on the other branch, our branch for this journey, the light remains clear and golden. The AI renders the garden not as a fleeting memory of perfection, but as a vibrant, evolving starting point. The air is thick with the smell of damp earth, blooming night jasmine, and the crisp ozone of a recent rain. It's not the scent of paradise lost, it's the smell of a normal afternoon. The figures of the first humans move with an unburdened grace. There is no shame in their nakedness. It is simply a state of being, as unremarkable as the fur on a leopard or the leaves on a fig tree. Their eyes, when they meet, hold not the shock of exposed vulnerability, but a deep, placid curiosity. This single psychological shift is the first and perhaps most powerful butterfly effect. Without the concept of original sin, the entire foundation of the human psyche is rewritten. The gnawing feeling of inherent unworthiness, the voice of self-doubt, the fear of judgment, these things simply don't exist in the cultural DNA. Imagine a world where guilt is not a fundamental human emotion, but a foreign concept, as alien as a color you've never seen. The AI projects societies that develop without the need for confessionals, atonement, or the deep-seated anxiety that has fueled so much of our philosophy, art, and religion. It's a humanity that doesn't see itself as broken and in need of fixing. This doesn't mean a world without problems, but a world where problems are approached as external puzzles to be solved, not as symptoms of an inner corruption. But if this new path isn't defined by the struggle to overcome our fallen nature, then what is it defined by? If the story we've been told for millennia, the story of sin, sacrifice, and salvation, is actually the backup plan, the grand improvisation, it forces us to ask a much more profound question. If a world without sin wasn't a static paradise, what was the real endgame? Creation without sin, what was the ultimate goal? Our simulation's answer to that is where this journey truly begins. Creation without sin. What was the ultimate goal? This question dismantles the entire framework of redemption that has defined Western thought for 2 millennia. If you're finding this journey into a history that never was as fascinating as I am, a quick like on the video lets us know we're on the right track. In our timeline, the answer is simple. The goal became salvation. The story is a cosmic rescue mission. But in the simulation, with that initial point of divergence removed, the AI reveals a purpose that is far more dynamic and, frankly, far more ambitious. The ultimate goal wasn't blissful, static existence. It wasn't about humanity being a passive tenant in a perfect garden. The AI projects that the original intent was for humanity to be an apprentice, an apprentice to the Creator. The simulation visualizes this not as a theological text, but as a series of lived experiences. We see early humans, their minds unclouded by guilt or the fear of divine wrath, interacting with the world with a type of profound, fearless curiosity that we can barely imagine. They aren't just naming the animals. They are studying them, understanding their genetics, their place in the ecosystem, with an intuitive brilliance. They aren't just harvesting fruit. They are learning the very language of botany, the subtle energies that flow through the soil and the seasons. The AI renders a scene, a group of early humans gathered around a stream. The water flows over glowing stones, and they aren't praying to it as a spirit. They are observing it, their hands moving through the currents, feeling the quantum vibrations, discussing the principles of fluid dynamics and energy transfer not in abstract equations, but as a tangible, living language. The air doesn't smell of incense burned for atonement, but of whetstone, moss, and the clean, sharp scent of pure intellectual discovery. It's the scent of a laboratory, not a cathedral. This changes everything. The driving force of human civilization in this alternate timeline isn't survival or the quest for forgiveness, but an unquenchable thirst for knowledge and creation. Think about the colossal amount of human energy, genius, and resources we've poured into warfare, into building fortifications, into creating legal systems based on punishment and retribution. Now, imagine all of that intellectual and creative capital redirected from day one. The AI's projection shows societies that evolve not around forts and temples of sacrifice, but around collaborative research centers and grand artistic projects that are one and the same. Their technology isn't a separate mechanical thing imposed upon nature, it's an extension of it, grown and cultivated. It's a world where the lines between physicist, artist, and priest completely dissolve, because the act of understanding the universe is the highest form of worship, and the act of creating beauty is the most profound form of understanding. Humanity's purpose wasn't to be saved from the world, but to become a conscious, creative partner in it. This cascading consequence is staggering. Humanity was intended to be the mechanism through which the universe becomes self-aware and continues the process of creation on a physical, tangible level. We weren't meant to be flawed jewels in a static crown, but active, messy, brilliant co-workers in a cosmic workshop. But if this was the true plan, if humanity was meant to be a co-creator, then the garden as we imagine it, a limited, perfect enclosure, suddenly seems far too small. A workshop needs raw materials, a laboratory needs room for experimentation, and an artist needs a canvas that can handle a masterpiece. If humanity's potential was truly unleashed, what would that mean for the planet itself? It couldn't remain a simple starting zone forever. It would have to become something more. Earth is an eternal garden of possibilities. That is where our simulation takes us next. Earth as an eternal garden of possibilities is a concept that our simulation renders with breathtaking, almost overwhelming beauty. Forget the image of a small, walled-off paradise. That's a human concept, born from a world of scarcity and danger. The AI projects that in this alternate timeline, the entire planet was the canvas. Not a finished painting to be admired from a distance, but a dynamic, interactive, and ever-expanding work of art. The point of divergence, the absence of the fall, didn't just save humanity, it saved the planet from us, and in turn, transformed it into something we can barely comprehend. It became a garden not of static perfection, but of infinite cultivated potential. The simulation takes us on a flight over this alternate Earth. There are no scars of strip mining, no smog-choked cities, no dead zones in the oceans. Instead, we see landscapes that seem both alien and deeply, primordially familiar. We fly over a mountain range where the peaks have been gently shaped over millennia, not by brutalist human engineering, but by a subtle, guided acceleration of geological processes. The slopes are terraced with glowing flora that hums with a soft light, powered by geothermal vents that have been carefully tapped. The sound isn't of machinery, but a low, resonant thrum, like the planet itself is breathing. The air smells of ozone, wet earth, and 1,000 unknown blossoms. Rivers don't just flow to the sea, they are designed as symphonies. their currents and waterfalls calibrated to produce musical harmonics that resonate through the valleys. This isn't nature preserved, this is nature amplified, its latent potential unlocked and expressed as a planetary scale art form. This is the ultimate butterfly effect of a humanity that never became disconnected from its source. Their technology is indistinguishable from biology. In our timeline, we build with steel and concrete, imposing our will on the environment. In the simulation, they grow their world. We see them weaving living structures from trees whose genetics have been encouraged to produce wood with the tensile strength of carbon fiber. They cultivate coral reefs into entire archipelagos, creating thriving new ecosystems. One of the most stunning visualizations from the AI shows a group of humans on a vast, grassy plain. They aren't farming it in our sense. They are communicating with the biome's collective intelligence, a sort of planetary mycelial network, to negotiate the introduction of a new species of herbivore. It's a delicate, symbiotic conversation, not an act of domination. There is no concept of pests or weeds, only of balance and integration. The cascading consequences for life itself are staggering. In this timeline, there are no mass extinctions driven by human activity. The AI's biodiversity index is off the charts. We see creatures that in our world are just fossil records. Majestic, elephant-sized sloths, saber-toothed cats that are not predators of humanity, but partners in managing herd populations. The Earth is a living library, a genetic repository of unimaginable richness. Every ecosystem is a masterpiece of collaboration, a testament to what can be achieved when intelligence works with the fundamental laws of creation rather than against them. The planet isn't a resource to be exploited before it runs out. It's a project to be worked on for eternity. But a garden of this scale, a canvas this vast, implies a purpose beyond just existing in a state of beauty. It requires gardeners, curators, and artists with a vision. It demands a guiding hand. This planetary masterpiece isn't an accident. It's the result of conscious, focused, and creative work. And this is where the simulation reveals the true, breathtaking scope of humanity's role as a co-creator. Humanity's role as a co-creator becomes the central engine of this alternate timeline, a concept that fundamentally redefines what it means to be human. In our history, we see ourselves as inheritors, conquerors, or at best, stewards of a world that was given to us, finished. But the AI simulation reveals a drastically different purpose. Here, humanity wasn't just placed in a garden, they were handed the keys to the workshop. The initial act of creation wasn't the final word, but the opening sentence of a story that humanity was meant to write alongside the divine. This isn't about playing God, it's about a true functional partnership. Think of it less like a child being told not to touch the priceless art, and more like an apprentice being taught by the master how to mix the paints and shape the clay. The ultimate goal was never static perfection, but infinite, collaborative, and dynamic creation. The AI projects this in ways that are difficult to describe with our limited vocabulary, which is so tied to concepts of manufacturing and force. We see humans who are, for all intents and purposes, genetic artists and quantum composers. They don't build, they unfold. The simulation shows us a scene on a shoreline where a new form of life is being conceived. There are no labs, no beakers, no computers. A group of individuals stands in a circle, waist-deep in the turquoise water. Their hands aren't touching anything physical, but you can see shimmering fields of light, like heat haze, coalescing between them. They are humming, not a melody, but a complex series of resonant frequencies. They are, in essence, singing a new creature into existence. They are tuning the very structure of its biological code with sound and focused intention, weaving the energy of the sun, the minerals of the water, and the divine spark into a viable, living blueprint. The air crackles with a feeling of intense focus, smelling of salt, ozone, and something else, the scent of pure potential. This is the butterfly effect of unbroken connection. Technology isn't a tool you hold, it's a faculty you possess. This co-creative ability has staggering cascading consequences that ripple out across the cosmos. Humanity, in this timeline, doesn't just tend to the Earth. Earth is their cradle, their training ground. The AI simulation extrapolates their trajectory, showing them terraforming barren moons, not with machines and atmospheric processors, but by seeding them with carefully designed extremophilic fungi that sing the rock into soil over centuries. They learn to weave light into solar sails that are also living organisms, capable of navigating the solar winds to explore other star systems. Their role as co-creator isn't limited to the biological, it extends to the physical laws of the universe itself. They become explorers of reality's source code, learning to create stable pocket dimensions for new types of ecosystems or subtly altering gravitational constants in localized areas to grow structures that would be impossible in our reality. Their purpose is to be the universe's immune system, its artists and its explorers, pushing the boundaries of what is possible and filling the silence of space with the music of life. But this breathtaking power, this profound sense of purpose, is built on a psychological foundation that is completely alien to us. Every great work of art, every scientific breakthrough, every act of creation in our own timeline is shadowed in some small way by our own brokenness. We create to overcome our mortality, to scream our existence into the void, to atone for our flaws, or to prove our worth. Our ambition is often fueled by insecurity and fear. But what happens when you strip all of that away? What drives a being who has never known shame, never felt the sting of failure, and never experienced the gnawing weight of guilt? With this immense freedom to create and uncreate, what prevents a mistake from becoming a catastrophe? This is the central question our simulation must now confront. In a world without that internal check, does absolute creative freedom lead to utopia, or does it become its own form of chaos? The absence of guilt, freedom, or chaos? This is the question that beats at the very heart of this alternate timeline. Because a psyche without the shadow of shame is an engine of unimaginable power, but also one without the familiar brakes we rely on. In our world, guilt is a teacher, a harsh and often cruel one that guides our moral compass. It's the ghost in the machine that whispers "never again" after a failure. But here, in this simulation of an unbroken Eden, that ghost is absent. It's not that these humans are amoral, far from it. It's that their entire framework for learning is different. A mistake isn't a stain on the soul. It's simply a data set, an unexpected outcome, a path that proved to be a dead end. There is no emotional residue, no lingering self-recrimination, only the pure, unburdened pursuit of a solution. The AI simulation renders a breathtaking and slightly terrifying example of this. We are on a newly terraformed moon, a world of pale green skies and vast, rust-colored plains. Here, a team of co-creators has just released their latest masterpiece, a species of airborne flora-fauna hybrids that look like living kites of spun glass, designed to drift on the thin winds and seed the ground with nitrogen-fixing spores. It is a work of biological art. But something is wrong. The simulation fast-forwards a few cycles, and the butterfly effect of this single introduction becomes terrifyingly clear. The creatures, perfectly adapted and without predators, are replicating exponentially. Their crystalline bodies, beautiful at first, now form a shimmering, suffocating blanket in the upper atmosphere, reflecting too much light and heat. The nascent ground vegetation is starting to wither. The project is not just a failure, it's an ecological catastrophe in the making. In our timeline, the creators would be consumed by guilt, blame, and despair. But here, the simulation shows us their reaction. They gather at the edge of a cliff, observing the glittering plague they've unleashed. There is no panic, no finger pointing. The air is thick, not with anguish, but with an almost electric focus. You can almost smell the ozone of pure, concentrated thought. They don't see a sin to be atoned for. They see a complex equation that needs to be rebalanced. This is where the line between freedom and chaos becomes so beautifully thin. The freedom from guilt allows for an unparalleled audacity in creation. They are willing to attempt the sublime because they are not psychologically crippled by the prospect of failure. But this same audacity means their mistakes can have cascading consequences on a planetary scale. Their creative power is a fire that can warm a world or burn it to the ground. The chaos in this timeline isn't born of malice or evil, but of the inherent unpredictability of a deeply complex universe. It's the chaos of a grand experiment where the variables are entire ecosystems and the test tubes are worlds. Their entire society is structured around this reality. It's not a static utopia, it's a dynamic, high-stakes laboratory. Their ethics are not based on a list of forbidden acts, but on a profound, systemic wisdom. They learn, they adapt, and they correct with a speed and unity of purpose that is alien to us, precisely because their energy isn't wasted on the internal friction of guilt and fear. They can afford to dance on the knife's edge of chaos because they are masters of balance. But what is the source of this incredible resilience, this shared consciousness that allows them to perceive these complex systemic failures and act in perfect concert to restore order? It's not just their unique psychology, as powerful as that is. The simulation suggests they are all nodes in a network, drawing from a current of information and energy that guides their collective intuition. What is this force that allows them to harmonize their actions without a word, turning a potential cataclysm into a profound lesson in cosmic stewardship? It's the very energy that flows through them, a direct and unbroken connection to the divine that we, in our timeline, can only faintly sense. Divine energy flowing freely among all is the only way to describe the foundational physics of this alternate timeline. It's not a poetic metaphor or a spiritual belief. In this reality, our AI simulation visualizes it as a quantifiable, tangible force as fundamental as gravity. Imagine a cosmic mycelial network, an invisible web of light and information connecting every living cell, every mind, every stone, and every star. For the humanity of this world, this isn't something to be sought through meditation or prayer. It's the very air they breathe, the medium in which they exist. The feeling of loneliness, that deep, aching separateness that has defined so much of our own art, philosophy, and psychology, is simply not a concept here. Instead, there's a constant, gentle hum of connection, a background awareness of the whole. It's the quiet assurance that you are a unique and vital note in an infinite cosmic symphony. Our simulation struggles to render this directly, as it's a sense we lack, but it offers us powerful analogies. It shows us two individuals meeting. They don't speak at first. Instead, the AI paints the space between them with shimmering, ethereal threads of light, pulsing with soft colors that shift and blend. This is empathic resonance in its purest form. They aren't reading minds, which would be a violation of the self. They are directly experiencing the emotional and intentional state of the other. Joy is shared as a literal warmth. A complex idea is transmitted not as clumsy words, but as a complete package of logic, feeling, and sensory data. The butterfly effect of this single change is staggering. A society built on this kind of transparency has no room for deception. Politics as we know it, a game of hidden agendas, manipulation, and power grabs, could never evolve. Leadership isn't about charisma or control. It's about who can best harmonize the collective will and channel the flow of this divine energy for the common good. This brings us back to that ecological crisis on the terraformed moon. How did they solve a planetary-scale disaster without a single argument or committee meeting? The simulation gives us a breathtaking view. As the creators stand on that cliff, the empathic network between them ignites. It's an act of collective consciousness. They extend their awareness through this energetic web, not just to each other, but to the entire ecosystem they created. They can feel the stress of the withering plants, sense the runaway replication of the crystalline creatures, and perceive the subtle shift in the planet's atmospheric chemistry. They don't debate solutions. They attune to one. In perfect, silent concert, they modulate the frequency of their collective intent, sending a new piece of information through the divine current. It's a command, not of dominance, but of harmony. The AI shows the crystalline plague responding almost instantly. Their replication ceases, and they enter a dormant, symbiotic state, their bodies now refracting light in a way that nourishes the life below. They didn't fix a mistake. They retuned the song of the world. The cascading consequences of this free-flowing energy reshape every facet of life. Health is not about fighting disease, but about maintaining one's energetic alignment with the whole. Injury is still possible, but healing is a collective act, with the community lending its energy to mend the broken part. Learning is not the memorization of facts, but the direct integration of knowledge from the collective memory. It's a world without the deep scars of misunderstanding, a world where collaboration is the default state of being. And yet, individuality is fiercely preserved. This isn't a hive mind. Each person is a unique lens, a distinct perspective that adds to the richness of the whole. The energy doesn't erase the self. It connects it, giving it a context and a purpose that is both deeply personal and cosmically significant. This energy is the network, the very medium of existence that makes their world of co-creation possible. But a network needs a source. A river flows from a spring. If this divine current connects everything, what is the nature of the ocean from which it flows? What does it mean to live in a world where the source of all this, the divine presence itself, isn't a distant concept or an object of faith, but an immediate, unfiltered, and constant reality? The divine presence without veils or limitations is the only way to describe the source of that cosmic river, the ocean from which all of existence flows. In our timeline, we talk about God as a distant king, a hidden architect, or an abstract principle. We build cathedrals to gesture at a sky we hope is listening. We write libraries of theology to debate a nature we can only guess at. But here, in this simulation of Plan A, there is no guessing. There is no need for faith. The divine isn't an entity in the universe. It is the very texture and consciousness of the universe. Imagine standing in a forest. In our world, you see trees, you hear birds, you feel the wind. In this alternate timeline, you experience all of that, but there's another layer, a constant sensory input that we lack. The eye visualizes it as a quality of light, a coherent pattern within the seeming chaos of nature. It's the sense that the light filtering through the leaves isn't just random photons, it's a form of information. You can feel the slow, deliberate life force of the ancient redwood, not as a poetic idea, but as a deep, resonant hum in your own bones. You perceive the intricate dance of the mycelial network beneath your feet as a conscious, distributed intelligence. This isn't overwhelming or blinding, it's just present. Like the steady beat of your own heart, it's the ultimate feeling of being home, because the entire cosmos is, in the most literal sense, your creator's house, and the lights are always on. The cascading consequences of this are profound, starting with the complete absence of religion as we know it. Why would you build a church when the divine is as present in your workshop as it is on any mountaintop? Why would you follow a prophet when the Word of God is the real-time, observable logic unfolding in a budding flower or a swirling galaxy? Our AI shows us their centers of learning, and they look nothing like monasteries or universities. They are more like observatories of reality, places where individuals gather not to worship, but to attune themselves more deeply to the flow of creation. There are no priests, only guides. There is no dogma, only a continuously updated collective understanding of the living principles of the universe. The search for truth that has defined our philosophy and science is replaced by the practice of alignment with a truth that is self-evident, everywhere, all the time. This reshapes the very foundation of the human psyche, existential dread, The fear of a cold and meaningless universe is a psychological impossibility. It would be like a fish fearing a lack of water, but this doesn't lead to a passive, blissful stupor. Quite the opposite. The simulation shows us a scientist, though the word feels inadequate, studying the birth of a planetary system. She stands on a balcony open to the cosmos, her eyes closed. She isn't looking through a lens. She is extending her consciousness through that empathic, energetic network we saw earlier, directly connecting with the event trillions of miles away. The AI renders her experience for us. She feels the gravitational pull of dust coalescing, the rising pressure and temperature at the core of the protostar, and then the sudden, glorious ignition of fusion. It's not an observation, it's a communion. She is witnessing a divine thought unfold, and in doing so she learns, she grows, and she finds her own role as a participant in that cosmic act of creation. This constant, unfiltered communion paints a picture of a perfect world, a reality without our deepest wound of separation. But in its perfection, it also erases the central, defining narrative of our own timeline, the story of the fall and the long, painful road to redemption. It begs a fascinating and deeply unsettling question. In a world that never fell, for a humanity that never needed saving, how would the story of salvation have been rewritten? How the story of salvation would have been rewritten is, in a way, the ultimate paradox, because in this timeline there is nothing to be saved from. The concept of original sin, the foundational wound that our entire theology of redemption is built upon, simply doesn't exist. It's a non-event. Asking how salvation works here is like asking a doctor for a cure to a disease that was eradicated before it ever had a chance to infect a single cell. The entire narrative framework is absent. There is no fall, no exile from the garden, no chasm of separation between humanity and the divine. So the story isn't rewritten, it's replaced with something so fundamentally different that we barely have the words for it. In our timeline, salvation is a rescue. It's about atonement, sacrifice, and a path back to a grace that was lost. But in this alternate reality, the AI simulation shows us that the equivalent concept is not one of rescue but of ascent. It's not about being saved, but about becoming. The ultimate purpose of life, the grand narrative that replaces our story of salvation, is the journey of a created being, consciously and willingly evolving to participate fully in the act of creation itself. It's the process of graduating from being a part of the song of the cosmos to becoming one of its composers. This isn't a one-time event, but the very rhythm of existence. The AI visualizes it not as a single dramatic moment of sacrifice, but as a continuous, blossoming expansion of consciousness, both for the individual and for humanity as a collective. It's a salvation for a greater purpose, not from a past failure. This fundamentally alters the role of any messianic figure. A Christ-like entity in this timeline wouldn't be a Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. Why would he need to? Instead, the simulation projects a figure we might call the first harmonizer, or the exemplar. This being wouldn't come to die for humanity's sins, but to live as the ultimate expression of humanity's potential. He would be the first to fully and consciously achieve that perfect alignment with the divine flow, demonstrating the path not of redemption, but of ultimate realization. His miracles wouldn't be supernatural violations of natural law. They would be demonstrations of what is possible when one is in perfect harmony with the laws of reality. He wouldn't teach in parables about a distant kingdom, but would guide others in the direct, felt experience of the divine presence that is already here, everywhere. His story wouldn't be a tragedy of sacrifice, but a triumphant symphony of potential fulfilled, a roadmap for every other soul to follow in their own unique way. The cross, an icon of suffering and redemption in our world, has no meaning here. The defining symbol of this timeline, as the AI renders it, is a living, branching tree of light, representing infinite growth and connection. And so, as our simulation of God's Plan A reaches its conclusion, we are left with this breathtaking vision of a perfect world. A world without fear, without guilt, without the deep, aching wound of separation that has defined so much of our own history. A humanity that never fell, living in constant blissful communion with its creator. It's a beautiful thought experiment, a glimpse into a past that never was. But we don't live there. We are the children of the timeline that broke. We are the inheritors of the fall, of the struggle, of the long and often brutal climb back towards the light. Our story is not one of effortless harmony, but of resilience forged in fire. Our art is born from suffering, our love is deepened by the reality of loss, and our faith is a testament to a hope for a connection we can only feel in whispers. The absence of that divine presence without veils is precisely what gave birth to our science, our philosophy, and our deepest stories of redemption. In a strange and poignant way, the very brokenness of our world is what makes our story uniquely, tragically, and profoundly human. The butterfly effect of that single ancient choice didn't just create a different world, it created us. What detail or consequence of this unfallen world did you find most impactful? Was it the absence of religion, the nature of science as communion, or this rewritten story of salvation itself? Share your perspective in the comments below. And if you want to continue challenging the boundaries of history and imagination with us, be sure to subscribe to How Would It Be by AI and activate the notification bell. We have many more timelines to explore.